hot in here, but I can't complain, to be honest with you. I might go and have a dram after this outside.
Oh yes, do it. It's that time of year. And also, I feel like we spend so long whinging about how cold and grey it is. We're so British. We're so typically British. As soon as the sun comes out, we're like, I'm too hot, I can't.
Too hot, can't deal with it. No, I tend to like, I know we've got peaty whiskey tonight. Do you have your smoky whiskey in the summer? Or do you really, I savour it more, I have to say, in the winter.
I savour it all year round, and I'm not just saying that, like I genuinely do. I think like a smoky highball is a dream.
Oh yeah, a highball gives it that refreshing edge, though, that summer vibe.
Definitely. Andy, a question: have you changed location or redecorated? I'm not used to seeing green on your screen.
No, I've been here for about 6 months now.
No, you just look like you've got a different colour behind you.
I think it might just be the lighting, to be honest with you.
Amazing.
Light here that's shining down as well.
You're illuminated like an angel. Anyway, enough of the chit chat about us and your room that hasn't changed. I can see there's loads of people already on the chat, which is amazing.
She's very observant. It's only taken her about 4 months to notice that I've moved now.
Also, for any Pour and Sip regulars, and welcome to Pour and Sip regulars and newbies, I almost had a Nando's last week.
Oh, that's actually the last comment here I've got on Slack from last week is, what's a Nando's? What led you to almost having a Nando's?
I was at the service station on the M25. What was it? The one with the Pizza Express, the Nando's, and everyone on Pour and Sip last time had told me how good the veggie dishes were, and that I had to go and have the halloumi. So I was like, I'm going to check this out. They were out of halloumi, so I didn't. They're out of halloumi. I know.
Did you sit down?
No, I got the menu in my hand, and then they were like, oh, by the way, and I was like, oh, okay, no.
The only thing. No. It's worse. I mean, it would have been worse if we've run out of chicken. I mean,
I'm a vegetarian, Andy. I don't care about the chicken.
I know, but it's their one job, really, is the chicken.
It's their one job. But yes, so that was a reference for Pour and Sippers who haven't joined us before.
It's so close. So close.
It's a running joke that I've never been to Nando's, but welcome to the party. If you, are here for the first time and don't know the Nando's chat, these evenings are super fun. So myself and Andy, we are whiskey geeks and we love having a chat with our fellow whiskey geeks. So please get involved in the chat. We want to hear your tasting notes, we want to hear your comments. And most importantly, we have a fabulous guest coming up later. We want your questions for him. It's George from Kilchoman. So there's a bit of a running order, spoiler alert for you. We're starting off with Caol Ila and then we're chatting all things Kilchoman, which I can't wait for. It's one of my all-time favourites.
All-time, yeah. We got loads of comments coming in here at the moment. Malcolm Tucker, good evening, everyone, on this sunny evening. Whilst I've had the Caol Ila Mock before, I have not tried the Kilchoman Saneg, so looking forward to the latter. TACD, hi, gorgeous evening tonight. Steve Coleman Williams, evening all. Welcome back, you guys. Green tea is green. Evening all too. Oh, yeah, we've already done your comment. Green tea is green. Malcolm Tucker, I'm drinking the Compass Box Glasgow blend.
Glasgow, put your teeth in, Andy.
No, it's the Glasgow blend. How did you say it?
Glasgow blend.
Oh, okay, just me. Don't worry, guys. Tongue twister for me. Or the Glenfarclas 105, depending if I fancy a little more strength. David Stanton, I've not tried any of this box. What's the best so far? David, we are going to ask that question at the end. Which is your favourite? So far, I can't even remember what we had last time.
I was going to say, I think they all showed really well last time. So we had Brook Laddie before with the Organic 2009, which is obviously a joy. We had 15-year-old Bowmore, which is a sherry-finished delight. And then we had the absolute classic Lefroy Quarter Cask, which you obviously know because you're in your boxes. And we are continuing the Peat Extravaganza this week with, the second half of the box. Because the month of May is the Isla Festival, and we are in the mood for it.
And absolutely. Steve Coleman Williams saying, Christy, we are almost proud of you. I'm so almost proud of you. Graham Lloyd Jones, can you get whiskey at Nando's? No, you can't. Is the answer to that one.
Have you asked, Andy? Have you asked to see the dram list?
The dram list, yeah. It's nearly as long as the wine list as one. David Stanton going to try all 5 tonight. Oh, great. I mean, you've saved them all for tonight. Very good. Peri Whiskey, says TACD. Yeah, exactly. I'm not in at all. Fan of Caol Ila, solid. Graham Lloyd Jones, Mike Pizarro, welcome back. Good evening. Few managed to construct a shed just in time for a well-earned whiskey or two. Brilliant. Bruce Edwards has got a question here. I don't know what's going to be because it's in bold. My brother and sister-in-law on holiday on the Isle of Lewis. Is that near you, Christy?
The Isle of Lewis. So yeah, they are temporarily stranded waiting for a ferry. Have Pour and Sip had a set of drams from the Hebrides previously, or do I have to hunt through all my tasting notes? So last May was Isla for the Isla Festival again. And we will pepper the odd dram. We've definitely had Mull before with the Chig and Tobermory. And I imagine, Talisker we've had, I think. Have we had Talisker? Yeah, we have. So yeah, so lots of Isla, definitely. But if you want to start a very easy starting point, May 2020, go and check that one out. Oh, 2021 rather, 2021. You will have lots of smoky drams there.
Yes, absolutely. Peter Gilmore saying Andy has started early, it seems. Lol. I genuinely haven't had a dram yet today, so that's even worse on my behalf. David Wiles really starting to like peated whiskey. That's what we like to see.
That's what we like, and that's what we're here for. And that's a really good point to start on, I think, because both drams this evening are peated. We're starting off with Caol Ila Mock, I believe it's called. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And then we've got Kilchoman after that. We put them in this order because Kilchoman is peatier. Caol Ila will sort of ramp us up to a little bit. But what I want to say, if you think you don't like peated whiskey, or if it's a bit like scary, you're not quite sure, it feels a bit bold, hang out with us. Focus on the nose, take little sips, don't be afraid to add water. I think there's such an amazing world of flavour around the peat, around the smoke, around the earthiness. You're still going to get your fruits. You're still going to get your sort of, your grainy elements. You're still going to get all the wonderful good stuff that you get in unpeated whiskey. There's just a load of smoke in there too.
I'd be interested to see how many of you in this box have changed your mind. And there was a dram from this box that has changed your mind. And if there are any of you, and there's nothing wrong with this, that haven't had your minds changed about smoky whiskey after having this box, because that's possible as well.
This is very true. That's a good point, Andy. It's okay to not like smoky whiskey. I say this through gritted teeth because my first whiskey love was very heavily peated and it was delicious. But if you don't like it, there are loads of other whiskies out there for you, and that's fine.
I go through stages. I honestly, like, sometimes I get in and I really, really am just like, I fancy something, very sherried or like kind of aromatic, fresh Speyside whiskey. I need to be sometimes in the mood for a smoky whiskey. But then when I get in that mood, that's all I want. So, I get it as well. So if you don't, let us know. If there's a dram that has made you change your mind from this box, please let us know. Anyway, enough nitter-natter from me and Christy.
I was going to say, we have not had a dram yet, Andy, and this is wrong. It's 7:37 by my watch, and it's time for a whiskey. So we're kicking off with Caol Ila this evening. Tell us a little bit about this one, Andy. I know that this is one you've been doing a little bit of research into and a bit of a think about in the run-up to the session.
First, I love Caol Ila, and it's kind of a strange distillery because we don't really talk about it that much in comparison to the Ardbegs. And the Graham Lloyd Jones asking that question now is a good point. I've always said Caol Ila, but everybody, how are you saying Ila of Caol Ila? I'm not a Scot, but I'm told it's Ila. Yeah, I think it's Caol Ila.
Yeah, I would say Caol Ila, but again, I am not Scottish. I cannot be any authority on the matter. I would love to be corrected. So any Scots out there, do let us know what you think. But
I'm going with Caol Ila, and I'm going to be doing that for the rest of this presentation. So if it's wrong, just let me know. So Caol Ila was built in 1846. So it's quite old, and it's the largest of the 8 distilleries across the Isle of Islay. It's isolated on the northeast corner of the island, and it faces Jura. And Caol Ila is actually in Gaelic Sound of Islay. So there you have it. And it was named after its proximity towards Jura. It's kind of a cool distillery because, like I was saying, it's not really talked about in the same kind of levels as Ardbeg and Lafroig and Lagavulin. And there's kind of a reason for that. But recently, it's starting to make much more of a name for itself within the single malt world. So, yeah, it's one of the only distilleries as well that can boast kind of almost not stopping production at any stage throughout its history. Only closed a really brief period during the Second World War when there were kind of new legislations on barley. But apart from that, it's been opened. And through that time, it's changed hands multiple times. And every time it has changed hands, it seems to have got bigger. And they've expanded it. Whoever's taken it on has expanded it. In 1972, the entire distillery was demolished and rebuilt to be able to function at high capacity. This included advancing from 2 stills to 6 in order to meet the new high levels of demand. That makes Caol Ila into Isla's largest producer and currently is about 6.5 million litres of whiskey a year, which is huge. there's a reason for that, because we had never really focused on Caol Ila as a single malt. You'd need to kind of look at independent bottlings to get your hands on that. And it was only since about 2002, when they released the 12-year-old, that we kind of had the chance to try the first single malt from Caol Ila. The reason for this is because of blended whiskey, and these were the days before the single malt market had really taken off. And it was destined for this huge array of blends across the whole whiskey industry, and most notably within its parent company, Diageo, because it's used for Johnny Walker. About 85% of its output is destined for Johnny Walker, 10% is destined for other blends, and 5% is single malt. So that kind of gives you an idea of where it currently is. But there are more kind of expressions available at the moment. So you've got the non-age statement malt we're going to try tonight. There's the 18-year-old, the 12-year-old, the 25-year-old, the Distiller's Edition, which is like, the Lagavulin one we tried, where they double mature it with the Pedro Jimenez cask. This year, I think Caol Ila had a Moscatel cask, unless I'm wrong. Someone might know better than me.
Yeah, that rings a bell.
And then there was the annual special releases, the Diageo releases. So there's kind of a portfolio building up of Caol Ila drams. Now, to think about the distillery character, it's kind of like this fresh pear kind of, grassy green note. But most importantly is that seashore note, that kind of salt air that we get from a lot of Islay whiskies. And even though it receives the same spec of barley as well as its sister distillery Lagavulin, its distillation regime is longer fermentation, higher cut points, taller stills. That's a really important thing, because it reduces those heavy phenols, and that's why it's kind of a slightly less peated version of like a Lagavulin or Ardbeg, and it's kiln to about 38 ppm, whereas, just to give you an idea, Ardbeg and Lafroig is to about 55 ppm. So it's a little bit less. I mean, I'm not so knowledgeable about what that kind of means in terms of what your whiskey is going to taste like at the end. Sometimes you see those ppms because it's not done like after this is done with the malting of the barley, so it can change. But the ppm is about 38 for Caol Ila. Now, Mock is Gaelic for dawn, which kind of is suggesting to me something a little easygoing, and that's kind of exactly what it is. This is a lighter style Caol Ila, so it's not like the non-age statement. By the way, the original cask strength, which I got, which is an absolutely amazing whiskey, or the 12-year-old. This is kind of a lighter version of it. And to be honest with you, there is absolutely zero information about what goes into this and what it is, apart from the fact that it's bottled at 43%. Assuming it's bourbon cask matured. But the reason for that is they say it's unconstrained by age, cask wood, strength, or finish. Basically, they want you to taste this whiskey and just enjoy this whiskey. Don't think too much. It's a lighter version of the normal Caol Ilas that we get, the single malt, the 12 and the 18. So it's one that they kind of want you to just enjoy, and maybe as an entry level as well into if you haven't tried peat before. Anyway, should we give it a go, Christy? Have you had a sip?
I may have had a sneaky sip, but I really thought that was so fascinating what you were saying, and it kind of lines up with what Abby was saying about Brookladdy and Octomore last week, about how the sort of phenol rating, as I want to call it, the ppm, the parts per million that you end up with in your whiskey, so much happens in the distillery between your malt arriving when it's already been peated oftentimes, although some people do peat a portion of their own, and then what comes out in the bottle. You've got all of the milling and the mashing and the fermentation and distillation, and just what you said then, the shape of the stills alone has such an impact. You've got the sort of the shorter stills where you want to get all of the oiliness, all of those heavy compounds, as much of that as you can through, and you've got taller ones like this which have just cut so much of that out. And I think it's so fascinating, and I think it's a really good lesson in not being, I don't know, blind to the ppm count.
Well, that's exactly, because it's the same spec as Lagavulin, which it's the same, but it's the process after that where we're losing those kind of heavier phenols because of the shape of the stills, and that's why it's a slightly subtler peat. I mean, it's not exactly subtle to me on the clearly there, but it's not necessarily your kind of Lagavulin or Ardbeg or Lafroig, let's say.
Exactly. I'm going to read out some tasting notes so you have a little dram. I love this one. I feel like there's a real fresh appliness to it. So David Stanton, apple comes up straight away. Dry grass, apple crumble and custard bacon. Joe F, big butterscotch. Yes, I love that. Steve Connell Williams, charcoal smoke with freshly tanned leather. Yes. Bob is also getting the apple. Gerard's talking rhubarb and custard sweets, which I love. Those old school boiled sweets. They're so good. And actually, I think that's a really good shout on the nose.
This is what you're saying as well, Christy, about that idea that like it's not just about the peat. We're getting all these sweet notes that are coming in, the kind of the old sweet shop rhubarb and custard notes coming in. So the peat is there, But underneath it, once you uncover those kind of other notes that are there, that's the magic of it, really.
And something really fun that I got taught actually at Distillery, it may have been Ardbeg, I'm not sure, is if you're struggling to get some of those go beyond the smoke, a really fun trick to do is like put some on your hand, rub it together, let some of the alcohol and other things go, and then see what you've got left. For me, there's loads of apple and some of those biscuity notes, but you just get so much less smoke that way.
Really biscuity as well.
Really biscuity.
Though my biggest concern with doing that was just not doing that right and losing the whole jam of whiskey. I thought that was about to just happen on air, live on air for you guys, which could have made it into like some kind of GIF or meme or something like that.
Andy tips his whole Caol Ila down his front.
And onto my Apple Mac as well. So that
onto the Mac, the precious Mac. Yeah, so I was going to say, don't panic if you're struggling to get past the smoke. There are sort of ways and means. You can add water, but just obviously the caution that you can add a few more drops in, but you can't take a few drops out. So yeah, but we've got loads more notes coming through. I like this one from Graham Lord Jones. Just on a comparison of the Caol Ila mock and the 18-year-old, I can confirm that both are glorious and should be served at Nando's, which I enjoyed.
The issue with serving it at Nando's, to be honest with you, is that if you're going with extra hot, if you get your chicken lemon and lime, something like that, fine. But if you're getting extra hot, you're going to kill those taste buds and you're not going to be able to. But then I suppose a peaty whiskey might help as well.
Might help. I promise we are not sponsored by that chain. Simon, smoky buttery, getting some citrus. Peter Gilmore, you can smell the apple and custard. Absolutely. Steve Hickson, not sure you'll change my mind over peated smoky whiskies, as we'll need to play catch up with the first three, as not had them yet. But that's good. I mean, you've got a lovely evening ahead of you all weekend. Sip, don't gob. Joe F. Shortbread and cold salted pork, green apples and raisins. I think that's great tasting note.
Great tasted notes.
Do you want to take over some, Andy?
Yeah, Joe F. Aside from the smooth peat, of course, I think that. In follow up to your previous comment, Ian Jambarin getting a petrichor hit now. Absolutely. Malcolm Tucker knows seaside ozone with wafts of smoked bacon and the slightest hint of TCP. Yeah, absolutely. I'm getting loads of that kind of sea air, the salty, briny kinds of sea air. But then the peat for me, there is the kind of unusually, it's not so medicinal, but there's like this green kinds of note, this grassiness, this heather note, which often might not get some much with an Islay one. You kind of get that classic TCP medicinal note, which isn't there as much for me. Chris Dagnan, another buttery biscuit base with subtle warmth from the smoke. Dutch, I take it. Graham Lloyd Jones, custard cream, green tea is green, not getting fruit, smoky bacon, but burned for most of all. Absolutely. Joe F. Oh, wow. That's so smooth and silky on the palate. It is silky on the palate. This isn't, for me, it's not a really massive, like, creamy mouth coating whiskey. It is quite silky on the palate. Such a velvety peat on the tongue with smoked meat, but a hit from that sweet shortbread. Real bunga. The nose, smoky seaside, a bit of green hills behind. Lovely stuff. Mike Pizarro, smells like the sea. A little beach fire reminds me of the Amaca Bay. Yes, we had that. Was that in the last Islay box car? We've had that. Was the Christmas one actually, wasn't it?
I think so. We've definitely had it before on Pour and Sip, and it went down very well.
It did. I think it was the one with the little hats, the cast strength one, the Christmas hat.
Yes.
Mike Baghammer. I will never get tired of that surname. That is amazing. Welcome back, Mike. Stormy Coast and Seaweed. Graham Lloyd Jones. Caol Ila is the best peated whiskey. It just is. Like I said, I don't think it gets talked about. I mean, it does get talked about, and it is getting talked about more, but not as much as it probably should. And I think that's because of the kind of association with it being in Johnny Walker mainly in this blended and kind of 6.5 million litres a year. And there's so many great little distilleries, more independent distilleries coming out at the moment on Islay. But and then obviously Ardbeg, Lafroig and Lagavulin. But there's just so much goodness from Caol Ila. And before you had to go to independent bottling to get it. And now we've got drams like this, and particularly that cast strength, honestly, and then the 12-year-old as well. Peter Gilmore, first taste, and I am impressed. Graham Lloyd Jones, rhubarb and custard. That seems to be quite a common tasting note at the moment.
I like it.
Yeah, you want to take over from TACD?
I know, there's so many taste notes coming through. Please keep them coming in. We love them. Much nicer from the palate than nose from TACD. David Wells takes me back to the barbecue I had at the weekend. Lots of smoked meat. I'm just going to pick out some more. Sorry if we don't read yours, but we always read them. This is where we've got to read them out as another thing. More rhubarb and custard from Steve Common Williams. Ali, lovely toffee-like initial taste. Nice prolonged finish. It's great. I like Ian Jambo Rain's assessment that this is a nice summer peated dram, which is sort of echoed by P. Barrett, light and very quaffable.
It's not meant to. I think that's the thing with this one as well. Just it's helpful to know as well. It's not. It's meant to be quaffable and light and fresh, and not quite as complex as maybe the 12-year-old. That's kind of where they're going for. What they're going for. Sorry, with this dram.
It's really interesting, and I think Gerard has picked out something really interesting with like the vegetal aspect of it, which I also really agree with. And I think sometimes we're so used to talking about the sweet side of whiskies, which we absolutely are. Yeah. And obviously you can't add sugar to them, but sometimes when you maybe have a wine cask or a sherry cask, it's all very Christmassy and very like, orangey and cakey and like a pudding. And this for me is like there is obviously fruit in there. We've talked a lot about like rhubarb and custard and apple and all these really like fresh notes. But for me, this does lean more towards the savoury. And I think it really celebrates the immense spectrum of flavours within whiskey and within peated whiskey as well.
Absolutely. Malcolm Tucker saying the Amaca Bay was in February 21 box. Do you have a list with you, or did you just remember? Spreadsheet of everything. I'd like to know that because that's really impressive memory. Graham Lloyd Jones, please can I have the Caol Ila mock in all my samples next month? Speak to the Pour and Sip team. Maybe email at some point. Let's see.
See what we can do.
Gerard McNeely, vegetable and wood smoke on the palate. Yeah. David Stanton, finished soft drying smoking peat. Yeah, for me, the finish is that lovely sooty note. Yeah. That kind of ashy, sooty note, kind of tobacco note, which I absolutely love. Mike Pizarro, this is a brilliant whiskey, right up my street. I love peat without too much iodine or sherry, smooth, buttery. Yeah, that's exactly it. It is really nice. Joe F, I noticed the finish is like the first cold sip of cider on a summer's day. Such apples on the back of the tongue.
Oh my God, I love it. These are such great tasting notes. Yeah. And I guess I wanted to round off this one, just very conscious of time and that we have our guest waiting in the wings. It's so interesting, I think. We're all really celebrating this dram. Ian Jambo-Rain has a spreadsheet, by the way, which is very
and Malcolm Tucker has all the tasting cards in an index box.
Oh, you're so organised, both of you. I need some of your organisation. Send the vibes my way. I
forgot what we had 2 weeks ago, to be honest with you, when we were talking about it. I was just like, what do we have 2 weeks?
But yeah, I think we've all, well, most of us, I think, at least, have really enjoyed this dram. And I think it does speak to how we can sometimes look down on blends. And I guess that was sort of my closing remark for this one. Like, I'm really, really enjoying it. And it's a reminder that blends, even the big blends, they are made from really wonderful component parts. Like, Caol Ila is a wonderful distillery. And it's just, for me, at least, a timely reminder to give blends a bit of a shout out that they are great. Different to single malts, but different isn't necessarily worse.
It's not necessarily worse. It's just different.
Yeah.
Yes. Anthony Mullins, I think my glass may have a hole in it as it has gone. You keep telling yourself that, Anthony Mullins. Actually, Steve Cumwins, I actually went one further, have a full-on database with web API for querying. Big up. Really big up.
Big up. And also, look at mine and Andy's faces. We're like, an API for querying? We also need a lesson in web development. Yes, anyway.
Must say it went very well with my sausages and jacket potato. Lovely complimentary flavors.
And here we start with the food again. You know what I'm like. I haven't had my dinner.
There you go. And Ali Curran, it isn't half bad with some dark chocolate. I imagine it's lovely with some dark chocolate.
I think salted caramel would go well with this one, as an aside.
Yeah, big time.
Yes. Cool. On that note, shall we move on to our next dram and bring in our guest for the evening? So this is George from Kilchoman. Let's bring him in. Hi there, George. How are you doing?
Good evening.
How is all in your world?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, enjoying the nice weather for once.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's amazing, isn't it? Just to briefly say bye to Andy, who will come back towards the end to join us. See you in a bit.
Everyone, have fun.
I always take great joy in cutting Andy off just when we zip him out.
The power.
Always do his last word. The power. It's gone to my head completely. So welcome to Pour and Sip. It is an absolute joy to have you here.
No, it's great to be here. It's nice to go back to doing online tastings again.
I mean, is it nice to go back? No, we'll not pick at that. But it is always wonderful, I think, just to have. I mean, we get to like interview fabulous people from World of Whiskey, have a great geeky chat and a tasting. It's a lot of fun. So thank you for taking the time. Let's kick off. Tell us a bit about you and your journey in whiskey, because you are part of a family that have literally shaped the history of Ireland distilling.
Yeah, that's very kind of you to say. So yeah, it was my father, Anthony Wills, who came up with the idea to build Kilchoman back in. Well, the idea he had was in 2001 was the original idea. So prior to then, I left school, was at university, and had no sort of plan to go into the whiskey industry whatsoever. And then I went off and did my own thing and was running gastropubs for a number of years.
Amazing.
And then joined the family business with my two younger brothers as well. And since then, we've sort of taken over the sales and marketing of Kilchoman, and we look after that. But my dad is still very much in charge, as he always tells us, on a regular basis. But no, it's been great, and to be involved in something and see it from an idea around the kitchen table to where it is now is amazing to be involved in. And we haven't all fallen out yet as a family, which is probably quite remarkable.
I mean, that does seem quite impressive. I also have so many questions about everything, so bear with. But I want to know a little bit about how the distillery got up and running. So it was 2005. Obviously, you said the idea was in 2001. And we were chatting a little bit earlier that the stills went live, first of all, that's the right, commission. They fired up, the stills were fired up right towards the end of the year. And what was that moment like? Were you there when everything was commissioned and got going?
I wasn't actually there. So actually it was, where was I? I think I'd left school, and I was sort of doing a bit of traveling and what have you. So I wasn't actually there when the stills fired up for the first time, but we had a number of issues that we came up against. They were meant to be commissioned in August originally, and then we had issues with steam pipes, so that got delayed. So we ran into so many different problems, and one of the biggest things was my dad probably tried to do it on a bit of a too tight a budget. And we had boilers that blew up in the first year because he bought a second-hand boiler. So there were a number of issues that we ran into, but we've learned from them, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it sort of helps us now to be where we are.
Yeah, and I feel like Kilchoman has become such a loved and adored Islay distillery, and for obvious reasons. The whiskey is fantastic, and I'm wondering a little bit if you can tell us about sort of how the brand has grown in the UK and internationally over those years, because I feel like what started as this teeny tiny little industry secret farm distillery, now you're so well known and celebrated far and wide.
Yeah, it's been quite remarkable, really, and I think a lot of it was we were very fortunate with the timing. The timing of when we were getting young whiskey on the market in 2009, 10, 11 onwards, people were becoming more around the idea of drinking slightly younger Islay whiskies, especially, and non-age statement whiskies. So that really did help. And because there hadn't been a new distillery in Islay for over 124 years, there was this sort of excitement around it. And distilleries weren't popping up as often as they are at the moment, I suppose, and that has helped us as well. And I think that people have enjoyed, sort of, as horrible as it means, just going on the journey with us from coming to the distillery in Fage 2004, when it literally was a farm with this is where the stills are going to be, mined out for the cows, etc. To now, I think people have enjoyed that, but we are very conscious now that yes, we are growing rapidly, and markets around the world are opening up to us. We have to stay true to what's got us to this point, as far as production styles, stills, etc. So it's one of those things that we only spoke about it the other day with my dad, and he was no way near, did he think that we'd get to this position so relatively quickly. But no, it's down to things like this, companies like yourselves who are so enthusiastic, and the knowledge for whiskey out there now is just remarkable. Yeah. And people are open-minded as well, which is fantastic.
Oh my goodness, it's so good. And I always think, we'll talk about the Islay Festival a bit later, and we'll talk about the whiskey itself in a minute as well. But I always think one of the things I've loved about visiting Kilchoman over the years, and again, I think it was 2012 was the first time I visited, is how you have so much of the processes accessible, open to see, including things like floor maltings.
Yeah.
That for me was really unusual and really set you guys apart. And I'm wondering how difficult it is to balance things like keeping floor maltings there as you're growing? Because that's a real tricky part of production, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean that, but at the same time as it being tricky, it's been key in sort of growing Kilchoman, because the idea that when my dad had the idea was to have a distillery which is purely 100% self-sufficient as far as we grew our own barley, we cut our own peat, we distilled, matured and bottled everything on site. But he soon realised that around that time, Bruichladdich were starting to look into the similar thing. They were also talking to local farmers. We weren't in a position to buy any more land. So then we've got this clear separation. So we've got 100% Islay, which is all our own barley that we do on the floor maltings, and then we buy malt in from Port Ellen. But keeping our barley ourselves and growing that barley is brilliant for us because we can be experimental now. So we can grow different barley varieties, we can experiment with different yeasts, etc. So it has allowed us to be a little bit more geeky, but that has only been driven by industry and the sort of consumers out there demanding that you try things slightly differently.
Oh my goodness, again, this has brought up so many questions, but I'm going to go to the whiskey first of all at this point, because otherwise we will get to 9 o'clock and we wouldn't have tasted it, because we've been talking about barley experiments and different yeast strains and fermentation distances and all of this. So, but talk us through this one. So we've got a question from Jared come in. He's asking about sherry casks that are used in this, but taking it right back, Senaig, am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah, Senaig, correct. So we started launching whiskey on the start 2009. We had our first releases. We had spring, summer and winter, 2009, 10 and 11. And they were all very, very small releases of only a few thousand bottles that we sold to really get us into the marketplace. In 2012, we were in a position with stock that we could have a bottling that was always available, and that was Amaca Bay.
Yes.
Which is predominantly bourbon cask matured. And then when we got to 2016, we were at the point where distributors and retailers were going, look, we need another Kilchoman that's we can always have. And because we're a young distillery, we can't go, okay, well, we've got a 10-year-old, we'll do a 15 and there we go. So we have to do a lot of cask sort of maturation experiments. So what we've done with the Senaig is predominantly sherry cask matured. And we use sherry hogsheads that we buy from Miguel Martin, who are famous within the whiskey industry for producing fantastic casks. And at Kilchoman, we produce a very relatively light spirit. Yes, it's heavily peated at 50 parts per million, but it's relatively light and floral. So this has allowed us that with good wood, you're getting a lot of depth of character. And when you put your nose in there, for me, you get these sort of oaky sherry notes and a little bit of light, almost light peat smoke for me personally, but I'm sure people will probably strongly disagree with that. But you get this lovely almost sweetness coming out. There's toffees and vanillas coming out. And that's all from the combination of our light spirit, so relatively citrusy spirit, and those fantastic sherry casks that have been used, the sherry hogsheads. So we find the sherry hogsheads, you get more of the sweetness coming out. Yeah. Whereas the butts, which are 500 litres, you tend to get those more sort of richer, darker, more sort of mysterious flavour profiles.
Yeah. And it's quite unusual, I think, isn't it, to have sherry hogsheads?
Yes. Yeah. And it was something that we sort of, I won't say stumbled upon, but we couldn't get a consistent supply of the butts we wanted. So we got some hogsheads in to try for finishes. And when we got them, we were like, well, this will stand apart. And this is what we're looking for. And we use quite a lot of hogsheads now, especially for the Senaig, but also with, Pedro Jimenez for single casks, etc. So, but these Oloroso ones really work well with the combination of the bourbon as well, which gives you that little bit of sweetness as well.
Amazing. A question from Almos that's just come in. So the sherry that you've got going on here, is it a finish or is it sort of like a longer maturation, a batting type thing?
So what we do with this is it's finished.
Yeah.
So it's finished in the fresh Oloroso sherry hogsheads. And it really does, because the hogsheads just over 300 litres, you really do get that impact in a short period of time, which really does give you that strength of character. Yeah. And then on the palate, for me, you get this lovely, almost like honey sweetness. Nice little bit of spice as well.
Yeah, I've been like cinnamon and nutmeg all the way. Yeah. So how long was the finish?
So the finish was about 8 months. So relatively short.
I guess for small casks though, because of the surface area, you're going to get loads of flavour. That's a hefty kind of. You're going to get a lot from it in that time. Yeah,
we get a lot from it, and it's something that we've had to experiment with, and it's something that, especially with the Saneg, because we do batches of it throughout the year, because we don't have huge vatting tanks that we can have loads of Saneg. So we do probably about 9 to 10 vattings of it a year, and each one we have to try and match up as exactly the same as each one. I'm sure if we line them all up, they've got slight variants, but the main thing is that we get that sherry influence coming out.
Definitely. For sure. Well, that would be a very exciting tasting to do. Like, we're just going to see what's going on with them. They're all delicious.
Line them all up.
Yeah, exactly. Ali has asked a question. So please keep your questions coming in, everyone. This is obviously fantastic. And I know your full-size bottles will state this, but the question is the colour all natural?
Yeah, everything we do is also all natural colour and non-chill filtered. And there have been, we did get some very overactive sherry hogsheads in 2021 or 2020. I can't remember off the top of my head. And literally the sherry, the Saneg was the darkest. And we got all these emails going, why are you colouring your whiskey? It's purely down to these unbelievable casks that we got. So yeah, everything we do from wine cask finishes to everything is natural colour.
The magic of the casks. And I feel like you guys, it's so interesting to hear you talk about how obviously you don't have aged stocks because you're a young distillery. How challenging is that to, I guess if you're blending, if you need to course correct anything, to not have access to those stocks to make a single malt, like how do you get around that?
It's something that it's a problem we've always had. So we've never been in a position where we've got a warehouse full of old stock. So I suppose that it makes Robin Bignell, who's our production manager, and my dad, who does a lot of the cask selection, it's something that they've always had to live with. We have to be very careful of is it would be very easy to go in the warehouse and take all the old stock and suddenly left with nothing. So when we do limited releases, especially of, for example, Loch Gorm, which is Olorosa sherry cask matured, what we'll do is we will take casks from different years. So we'll take a few from whether it's 2007, a few from 2008, 2009, and do it that way so that we are protecting our stocks. And that is the biggest problem we have is managing the stock in the warehouse. It's a daily issue that we have because back in the early days, pre-2009, we weren't producing over 100,000 litres of alcohol.
Yeah, it's amazing.
There's not much of it. We've got a lot of stock from 2016 onwards. So we've just got this little bit of time to navigate through. But no, we're building up a decent stock level now.
Yeah, which is good for us. It's all our greedy whiskey fans, of which I am one, coming through and hoovering it all up. And a question now from Guy CP, and then I'll get to some tasting notes because they are coming in thick and fast and they are amazing. He wants to know, what happens to the sherry hogsheads after the initial 8 months? Do you reuse them at the distillery?
Yeah, no, we reuse them. So because at the moment at the distillery, we are probably only maturing for a maximum at the moment of, well, the maximum we're ever going to do at the moment is 16 years is the oldest whiskey that we're going to produce this year. It means that those casks have got a lot of life left in them. So they'll go back in to be used, whether it's for just a pure hogshead cask matured or for finishing Loch Gorm again. Sorry, Saneg again. Just slowly choking.
It's all good. It's all good. I'm going to read out some tasting notes while you have a glug of water. And then we have to talk about the Isla Festival and that hint at that 16-year-old. I am coming back to talk about that. So Malcolm Tucker, I love this tasting note. Bicycle inner tubes, brine, light smoke, sherried fruit, hints of dark chocolate. Amazing. Steve Common Williams, again, sorry everyone, I'm going to whittle through these, but I'm loving them all, and we do honestly read them all. Quite an earthy smell with just a hint of smoke, maybe some really rich chocolate. Yum. We've got lots of people chatting about sort of the weight of the peat and the smoke and how it comes through more on the palate than the nose, which is what you were saying, which is completely in alignment. Real Boinger, bourbon first impression, quickly overtaken by a lighter fruitiness of the peat as a constant companion. I like that. The peat really is a constant companion. Steve Comer Williams, again, nice and spicy, hit of smoke followed by fruit and nut dark chocolate. Does this exist? Let me know if it does. I want some. A surprising sweet taste from Anthony Mullins. Mike Pizarro, this is so different from the last whiskey and still great. Reminds me of milk chocolate with raisins, maybe in some rum and raisin ice cream. So delicious, so delicious. We've got Kim. Thanks for tasting that, Kim. Scent of coffee and cinnamon. Bitter dark chocolate, lovely spice, gentle smoke. This is so delicious. Winner of the day for sure. So that's wonderful from you, Kim. And then we've got Joe F. Just realised which whiskey this really reminds me of. Burnt Ends blended whiskey, a Tennessee rye blended with peated and sherry finished single malt Scotch, which is so interesting because you've got maybe some of the bourbon influence there as well as the sherry and these wonderful things. P. Burrett, smooth and strongly flavoured, seems to be a little rough around the edges, but may need a little more aging for a superb future dram. I mean, I think it's just very lively. I don't know how you say to that.
It is a young whiskey. I can't sit here and say it's not. It's predominantly 5-year-old. Well, it's pretty much all 5-year-old whiskey in there. But what everyone's sort of at Kilchoman, we started always knowing that we were going to produce a young whiskey. The plan was always to produce 3, 4, 5-year-old whiskey and then look to see how we could extend the maturation process. And I suppose we're reaching that time now where we're going, right, okay, we've got to 10-year-old with a lot of the fresh casks because we've got this depth of character at a young age. Now we're using refills and second fills to push the maturation out a little bit longer.
Yes. Now, on that, I am sweating to talk about this. And I'm also furious that I'm not personally going to be on Isla this year because you guys, when we've come to visit you and interview you, have very generously given us a little taste of your Isla releases. 16 years old for the festival this year. What is this? Tell us all about it.
So we always like to do something special for the Fèis. And we decided that it would be a great time to do our first ever 16-year-old. So we selected 5 fresh bourbon barrels from 2006 and bottled them at cask strength. So there's in the region of 900 bottles.
Oh my God, this is thrilling me. So no finish, no nothing, pure Kilchoman character, cask strength, natural colour, boom.
Cask strength, 50 ppm. And I am biased, but it's exciting for us to taste whiskey at that age because it's got Kilchoman, when it gets over that sort of 12-year-old in a fresh bourbon barrel, it just gets this amazing creaminess to it. And the peat almost slightly, the peat comes a little more subtle. It's exciting to be able to do a 16-year-old. We get very excited about it, and then we see other distilleries doing sort of 25-year-old. Like, well, we're not quite there yet, but we know it's nice to be able to do it. It's great for us, the fact the Fèis is back on.
Oh my God, I'm gonna have to just be off social media for that week, I think, because the FOMO is gonna be far too much. But so before I ask about the festival more, because I know you guys always put on an amazing show, how is it? Like, can you forecast the flavour trajectory over time? Like, is a 16-year-old what you hoped it would be? And where do you start to know, for basically uncharted territory from a distillery like yours, it's not been done before? Like, how do you know, can you know what to expect? This is something that we were talking about as a family not that long ago. We've got these casks, 2006-year-old casks. Do we say let's push them out a little bit longer and see what happens? But the risk then is the cask comes over and you lose the Kilchoman character that we've got there. So we feel that 16-year-old is up there with how we want Kilchoman to taste as a slightly older dram. But I'm sure people will let us know when they taste it at the end of May, beginning of June. But personally, I feel that if we pushed our fresh casks longer than 16, we would lose our Kilchoman character. And especially when it came to sherry casks, we wouldn't want to push sherry casks much longer than 50, fresh sherry casks, much more than 15 probably. It's so interesting as well, because I think as somebody who is at the heart of it, like a lover of Isla whiskey, the youth of Kilchoman is its character. That's what we've become accustomed to. So I guess there's a really interesting trade-off between like your signature vibrancy versus that real like chilled out but
Yeah.
rich and sumptuous vibe that you get with old whiskey.
It is funny now that we start releasing slightly older whiskey that we get people going, well, hang on, we want to go back to a 3-year-old single cask, please, because we love that vibrance and the freshness of it. But it's great now because we can always go back and release a few younger casks as well. But it's nice to be able to do something slightly older.
Yeah.
We were amazed that my dad wanted to do it, actually. But it was 100% his idea. He was the one that selected the casks.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hopefully only 900 bottles. So we do a very, very limited amount, and we just have them for the day. So unfortunately, I'm sure there's gonna be questions coming in, but unfortunately, unless you come to Kilchoman on the 2nd of June, you probably won't get a bottle.
I need to work out how to get there. I'm going to swim from the mainland.
Well, don't worry. You're not the only one who won't be there. I won't be there. This will be my first year that I won't be there. But
and for a good reason, I gather.
Good reason, yeah. My wife is due to give birth in 9 days' time, so I'd probably get in a bit of trouble if I
exactly.
left.
Some things are more important than the Isle Festival. Not many, but some.
Some.
And before I ask you more about that, a question that popped into mind earlier that's come back now. You were talking a little bit about how you are now able to be more experimental with barley varietals, yeast strains, all of this. This is the stuff that I really am fascinated about. What are you looking to achieve through these experiments? Are you looking for brand new flavors? Are you looking for something that's different for Kilchoman, but maybe out there already? Are you looking for things like environmental wins?
I suppose what we are looking to do is, especially with a lot of people talk about, like this evening, talking about ppm and how people, pin the hat on that. Well, there's a lot of things that happen to the barley through the process before it gets in the glass. So we want to look at each part of that. So starting with the barley in the field. So what we do at the distillery and people that come, we have a field to the left of the drive that we split into 2.
Yep.
And we last year we planted sassy and oh my lord, and publican barley in there, had a main brain in there, and we plant them side by side so you can monitor how they grow, and we distill them separately. We do things like we see how large the corn is compared to the other one, and then we'll distill them separately, taste the spirit separately, and go from there. And it's interesting to be able to do that. And we're fortunate that we can do that. And I suppose we're looking to see if there's another barley strain out there that will give us a slightly more unique flavor profile, give us something that might mature slightly differently. And then when it comes to yeast, we've always used Maori yeast since 2004. We've always used the same. And it was actually, it was Dave Broom and my dad were talking somewhere, and they said, well, why don't you try a few other different bits and pieces?
Yeah,
so
why not?
We've tried different strains of yeast, from liquid yeast, etc., to see how that reacts in the fermentation time with the same long fermentation time that we always do, which is over 80 hours, and see how that affects the spirit. And we feel that that's what people want now, because people love their whiskey and they love the fact it's maybe a Kilchoman. Well, they know what it's going to taste like. Well, let's try something a little bit different. And we've always done it with casks as well. So we've had port cask matured, Sauterne, Madeiras. So yeah, it's great to be able to do. But at the same time, because we're relatively small, we don't experiment too much, because then we've got the same issue of not enough casks in the warehouse to do our core range.
I mean, it's
a full circle.
Yeah, a good problem to have when there are too many good things going on. Right. Last thing, I feel like we could chat for hours about all things Kilchoman. I'm going to ask you about the Isle Festival, and I'm going to read out some taste notes, and then we'll bring Andy back for any. So, any final questions for George? Now is the time to get them in for anyone watching. My final question, to stoke the FOMO further, because it is real. What have you got planned for the Isle Festival? I have so many brilliant memories of being at Kilchoman, whether that's being given bacon butties. Well, I didn't have the bacon, obviously, in the rain, or live music. And you have Kilchoman cocktails, I think, the year before the pandemic in the rain.
Yeah, so we've got 3 bands playing throughout the day. We have got various tastings. We do the usual ticketed tastings that are already, sold out. So we've got 3 tastings like that. We're also doing a live online tasting as well, so that the people who can't be there can tune in our social media and have it, just join in for a tasting.
Yeah.
We have tasting events of the core range that you can buy a ticket for on the day. We've got farm tours.
Yes, which are amazing. If anyone is going, I want to see all the farm tours because they're fun.
What else we do? Like the malt floor is open, so there's malt down on the floor. The guys will be in there to be able to go and answer questions. So you can essentially take yourself on a tour around the distillery, walk into any park because we're in production. The guys in the still house will be there. You can go and talk to them and annoy them for as long as you want, and then go into the malt floor. The bottling, the guys will be in there. Warehouses will be open. So what we try and do is open up the whole place and go, right, people who want to know about Kilchoman, there it is. Go and enjoy it. And in the background of that, hopefully we get some nice weather, even though it normally rains on Kilchoman Day.
It always rains on Kilchoman Day, always.
Yeah.
And then one final thing, I gather the famed beach rugby Distillery rugby tournament is sadly still off.
Yes, sadly. Our days of playing in it, I used to play with my brothers in it for a number of years, and we actually somehow managed to win it a few times. But no, that was always a brilliant, fantastic day in June. And sadly, 2019, I think, was the last year. I don't know who won it. It definitely wasn't us. But it's always brilliant fun and combination of distilleries putting in decent teams, distilleries putting in guys from production, from anything. So no, it's always a good day out.
Did anyone ever fly in pros to make sure they won?
One distillery that I won't name did always used to bring in a very, very good team. I mean, a semi-professional Scottish team. But that's fine. They were always quite good. But the best thing was they normally got themselves a bit too drunk the night before anyway. So
yeah, and that means you can win. It's the advantage. That's the delayed gratification piece. Have the whiskies after the tournament. This is amazing. Right, I'm going to read out some taste notes and zip Andy back. So, John James, the Kilchoman is smoky, sweet, and dangerously easy to drink. We've got debate about green and blacks, about raising the hazelnut, going with it. I don't even know what Graham Wood Jones is talking about, but it's gathered a swarm of flies, proving that it's fruity. Anthony Mullins, does the website automatically add the basket as I appear to have accidentally bought a bottle of this, which is good news. And then Graham Lloyd Jones, I think this dram would go well with porridge, very breakfasty. I want more. And I'm going to bring Andy back. So we've got a couple of last minute questions, but I'll bring Andy back and we can have a general chit chat as well. How are you doing, Andy?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm having a wonderful time. This dram is it's brilliant. Really interesting.
It's gone. Well, there's I'm going to save that for the last bit of this because it feels rude to not have something to drink during this part. Big up the breakfasty drams with porridge.
I like it. A lot.
That's strong.
Really, really good. So a very important question from Almos. Where can they find that online tasting from Kilchoman on the Isla Festival Day? Tell us, where can we find details?
So details are all on our website. I think there might still be packs available to buy, but if not, you can just tune in on Facebook and our YouTube channels for the tasting. And it's my dad and one of my brothers who'll be doing it live from the distillery, which probably could go horribly wrong. Probably the Wi-Fi will crash or something, but no, it's just a way of trying to open it up to other people because it's not always easy to get to Isla.
No, and that leads us on to another question from Mike Prezzario, which is a great question. I want to hear your view, George. Andy, you might have a take, and I have a take as well. When is the best time to visit Isla other than the festival? They're considering taking themselves on the tour maybe in October.
I mean, I would. It depends what you want to do. If you just want to go around all the distilleries, which I imagine they would, October would be a great time because all the distilleries will still be open. There's a chance that you still might get some nice weather, but if you avoid school holidays, I'd say, because you don't always get the crowds on the tours that want to learn about whiskey. They're just trying to maybe kill some time. So October, a great time, and all the distilleries do fantastic tours and open their arms to everyone.
Yeah. I went in January one year and had an amazing time. I would say the plane journey in was less good because of the aborted landing in the wind. But once we got to the island, it was fantastic. And there was like no one at any of the distillery. So you could just go around, essentially have a private tour. Everyone's really pleased to see you. Accommodation and restaurant reservations were easy to get. I would say that, anywhere, the mid-season is best avoided. That is not pretty.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've actually never been to the festival. This is something that I really very much need to rectify at some point soon.
It's an experience.
It's an experience.
You need to sort of train your liver up for a good while beforehand.
Yeah.
I've been I don't know.
Been doing that for years.
I worked really hard during lockdown, to be honest, in 2020. So I built my stamina up, but it's gone a bit recently, I have to say. I need to build it back up again.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a marathon, not a sprint, this whiskey lark. It's good to have some recovery time.
We're pouring and sipping tonight, let's be honest.
Exactly. We are pouring and sipping. So, Andy, I imagine you are poised with the meanest question of the month that you will ever ask anybody.
Oh, blimey, yeah, absolutely. It is that time. And sorry, we're not going to offend you, Mark, with this question. But which has been your favourite whiskey of this Bonanza, Isla Bonanza this month? Which has been your favourite whiskey? Again, should we give them a reminder, Christy, just in case anybody forgot?
You're really mean. This is going to like pick my brain now. So we started off with Brooklady, Organic 2009, Brooklady. Then we had Bowmore, 15-year-old, which was the really sherry, like delicious thing. Then we had Lefroy Quarter Cask, an absolute classic. And then obviously tonight we had Caol Ila Mock, and then we've had Kilchoman Snake. So if you needed your reminder, there we have. And I would say, do give spoilers for people who haven't tasted yet, and they'll know exactly the deliciousness that they have in store for them.
Yeah, so get your answers in now. Fastest fingers first.
Fastest fingers first. We've got the votes coming in already. We'll do a rundown. We'll do a rundown shortly.
We'll wait a little minute just to get them all ramped up, and a little bit of tension as well.
Exactly, a bit of tension. I do actually have another question for George. A much more like fun question. While we're waiting for these to come in, obviously your family owns and runs Kilchoman. You're part of a family business, but for you personally, do you remember a moment when you fell in love with whiskey?
That is a very, very good question. I can remember the time that I swore I'd never drink whiskey, which was when I was about 16 years old. And my first whiskey, I took some Lefroy 10-year-old from my dad's drinks cabinet, thought that he wouldn't notice, and drank it with some friends, and then swore I'd never drink whiskey again. But I think that probably what I enjoy the most is the fact the whiskey industry is so open and so friendly that I've had the opportunity to try whiskies that I would never, ever have dreamt of trying had I not been in the industry. And I suppose that it's the people within the industry. I know it's very cheesy to say, but the people in the industry make it what it is. And it really is. We're very lucky to work in the industry. We do the brand ambassadors through to people like it's just a great place to be. And I suppose I've fallen in love with whiskey whenever I get to try the whiskey in the warehouse, probably. Yeah. Tasting the whiskey straight out of the cask I've had some moments in the warehouse where I've gone, wow, this is special.
Yeah, I agree, and you're so right. I feel like every time we have pour and sip and we have guests like yourselves come on and we just have a lovely chat for like 20 minutes, half an hour. And I'm like, wow, this is such a treat. And I've been so lucky to like interview people and taste incredible things. And it's just a wonderful place to be. And I don't know, I'm sure people watching have found visiting distilleries. People are so generous with their knowledge. You can just literally soak up all of this stuff and it's wonderful. It's just
people generous with their knowledge, but also generous with their drams
as absolutely.
Well. Absolutely. It's kind of mad, to be honest with you. It's like that thing, you just want to share it with people. Like you've tried something great, you just want to share it. And that's pretty much everyone I've met in the whiskey industry. And I've still not met anyone that is just, even everyone we've interviewed as well, Christy, it's been anyone who's just not been open and generous and just wanted to kind of just, sell their knowledge to the world and all of these kind of things. I think it's kind of an amazing industry.
Indeed. I think we may have even snuck around a handful of NDAs in our time as well and got some whiskey secrets out, which is very fun. Andy, where do we start? The votes are flowing.
DH, Bowmore 15. TACD, my favourite tonight is the Kilchoman. Have to try the other 3, but I'm excited to see if they're even better. Yeah, all good ones. Steve Coleman-Williams tonight, Caol Ila, Bowmore for the month. Peter Gilmore, Kilchoman, it's lovely. Simon Can't Choose this month, also different and amazing. Anthony Mullins, Lefroy changed my mind on Pete, interesting. But the Kilchoman has now taken it. Ian Jamborain, so difficult to choose. The Lefroy Quartercast just picked the laddie. Malcolm Tucker, Kilchoman, both for tonight, and the box. So big winners tonight. It's Graham Lloyd. Christy, did you watch Eurovision, by the way?
Oh, and please, of course. Oh my God, we haven't even discussed Eurovision. We have to go again. We'll go again. We'll have a whole nother hour for Eurovision. Okay, fine. The closing remarks will be Eurovision related.
Graham Lloyd Jones, both blinding whiskies, very different, but I love them both. Not previously familiar with the Kilchoman. Will order a large volume. Very much good idea. Almos Camp, the Lefroy Quartercast is an absolute classic, but it probably has too many votes already. I like that you're trying to be different as well. You're thinking of the someone else. I'll vote Kilchoman. Chris Dagnan, a close call this month. Kill, Mock, Quarter, Yum. Little abbreviations there for all 3. Wild-Eyed Bill. Welcome, Wild-Eyed Bill. I've not seen that name before. Such a fantastic box of excellent whiskey. But tonight, the Kilchoman just judges in front. Nudges in front. Christy, do you want to take over? And Chris Randall, there's loads tonight.
Probably would have to stick with the Bowmore, but I wouldn't pass over any of the others. They're all great, and a few already in the cupboard. Ali, it's the Lefroy Quartercast for me. That's not to diss any of them. All 5 were wonderful in capital letters, which is my personal view as well. Wonderful all the way through. David Wilcock, Kilchoman for me tonight, and again, same choice for the whiskey of the month. However, both tonight's are in my basket. And we've got a little ranking here from Mike Pizarro. Oh, it jumped up. Kilchoman, Caol Ila, Brooklady, Bowmore, Lefroy, Pesho, Quartercast for them. Royal Boying, it's impossible for me to choose one best Islay whiskey. I love them all. P. Burrett, the Kilchoman Sinay gets my vote this month as it's a lovely evening dram and has future potential. Yes, I'm so excited to taste some older Kilchomans coming up. Jen Freeman, Kilchoman, Brooklady, Lefroy, Caol Ila, and then Bowmore. David Stanton, Lefroy for me, but have drunk all 5 tonight and all great. Wild-Eyed Bill just looked up the Kilchoman Official 2022 live tasting. It was all sold out with a very sad face, but you can still tune in. You can even save if you have. I mean, I have a tiny bit left. Some of the Sinay to sip along with. There's a question coming, which I'm going to leave until last from Mike Pizarro, which might be my question of the night. Mika, Kilchoman tonight, still to taste the other 3. And then to round off with Mike's question, I don't know if either of you watch Eurovision. George, you're a Eurovision fan?
No, sadly.
I tell you, you miss out on the treat. I would say top 3 of all-time Eurovisions this year, I think.
I was washing my hair that night.
It's iconic.
Is that because we did well?
No, and that was my passing thought. So Mike Pizarro, which is the best whiskey to watch Eurovision with? I would say any whiskey, as long as you're watching Eurovision.
You have to drink one from each country, and you have to find a whiskey from that country and drink it. That's the challenge.
Definitely. And I think that probably would be less of a challenge these days with the global distilling boom. But that would be very fun. And did you
be a good night?
It would be a great night.
How many countries is that? It'd be a very good night.
25 performers.
We'll enjoy the Eurovision on the night like that.
Oh my gosh.
No, I've got to be honest with you. I was following Twitter, but I didn't watch. I was working, unfortunately, so I didn't watch it. But I heard great things, and we did well. So
we did the best that I've ever seen. I would my thoughts on it, as you asked, Andy, was that we came second to Ukraine, and I'm very glad that Ukraine won. But I thought our song was okay, but we've had better songs in other years that have got 0 points.
So I wonder what was it about this one?
I think that I believe his name was Sam Ryder. His TikTok charm won the continent over. Yes. I would recommend watching Spain. Watch Spain's entry. Very, very fun. If you like, the song was written for Jennifer Lopez, who turned it down. So if you want a pop banger, go and check out Spain.
Is that who you voted for?
I voted for 8 of them. I loved it. I was in my element. And obviously all the semi-finals as well. So great. Okay.
We have a real Eurovision. She might not know Nando's or Star Wars, as we've discovered, but
yeah,
Eurovision.
I do know Eurovision. I do know Eurovision.
It's right up there. And Chris Dagner saying, and there was a judging cartel scandal too.
There was in one of the semi-finals. Yes. They're going to turn it into a second Eurovision film, I think, this year. Anyway, enough of this. It has been amazing. Thank you for joining us, George. Sorry to lower the tone at the end with Eurovision bands.
That's fine. I enjoyed it.
I'm glad.
I learned something.
Well, we learned loads and loads from you. Thank you for talking us through everything, the history of the distillery. Congratulations on reaching 16 years for your whiskies. That is an incredible feat. And thank you for sharing Sinead with us.
Absolute pleasure.
It's been so good. And thank you for tuning in, everyone. Thank you to Andy as well. I believe next month we are going to be back on, because of the Jubilee, we'll be back on the 9th.
9th of June, yeah.
9th of June, which is very exciting.
Yes.
And until then, enjoy the drams and see and enjoy as much of the Islay Festival as you can from remote, I would say. It's really worth tuning in for.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, all. Have a great evening. Bye.